Ever since I dropped into this pit of trying all sorts of JRPGs, there's some that have always kind of eluded me. Games that I missed. If you look at my track record at my end-of-year reviews, where I go over every game I played in the past year, there's not really a lot of signs of older titles. And that's not for a lack of interest. I've wanted to start series like Yakuza for a long time. I've actively held off playing FF7 due to trying to decide whether to play the remakes or the original first, and also just waiting for the entire remake trilogy to be announced. Some of your most beloved JRPGs are probably games I've never even touched. But for one series, it got a chance for that to change. Trails was one of the franchises that I didn't really tap into that much. Of course, I'd heard of it. I even attempted to play the demo for Trails of Cold Steel 3, which immediately fried my brain. Nevertheless, with a remake of Trails in the Sky First Chapter, the first game in the entire franchise, I was finally ready to tackle this series. And it wasn't really all what I was expecting.
Shara, please, just a second. I would appreciate a moment to reconsider my decision.
When I took a quick glance at the titles in the franchise, I assumed the games were connected to a degree. Obviously, all the ones labeled Sky are directly connected, and Cold Steel are also directly connected. There's also the fact that I had a vague memory of seeing a trailer for Cold Steel 4 and seeing a character from the demo of that in the next game or something, and I still don't totally remember. But either way, I made the assumption that the games were going to be about as connected as the numbered Persona titles. Seeing Trails in the Sky's mix of action and turn-based combat was also pretty interesting to me. After all, games like Metaphor were doing the same thing, so a series merging the two formats wasn't a foreign thing. Other than that, I expected the usual JRPG shenanigans. I was excited to see what the game had to offer, with the very limited information I had on the series as a whole.
Very well. I suppose you'd like me to show a bit of sincerity, yes?
I would think that's to be expected.
Trails in the Sky is a very dialogue-heavy game. And by that I mean that in the beginning, you will not be let off the leash until you get all the story the game wants you to have. And that's not a bad thing, but just keep in mind that for the early game. Trails has a lot to offer in the story department. I would argue that it's nothing incredibly groundbreaking, at least from this chapter of the story. This game is 20 years old, so it's not surprising that you've probably seen the story beats it hits, and some of the twists are semi-predictable, so you've probably seen this kind of stuff before, but that's not a bad thing. I think it would be well within your expectations if you've been playing JRPGs just over the past several years. What Trails excels in is keeping the story interesting. While the story isn't generic, but it's just, it's anime, it's still a good story, and it gives you time to properly get to know the characters that you're traveling with. It's a miracle that even within a story that is only defined as the first chapter, I feel as though I've gotten to know all of the main cast well enough that the ending feels satisfying. Without saying much, that's what I can note about the story and characters, two of the most important components in this game. The game itself is still exceptional. The core of it is welding together a real-time action combat system with a rather complex turn-based system. Instead of relegating action to being a single preemptive strike, the developers decided that most ordinary combat scenarios can be tackled from either approach. Boss fights are still actually all turn-based, but regular combat can be done how you want. The game's main system is still the intricate turn-based combat system. Real-time action is used to set up the players for an advantage. The actual scope is still fairly limited. You get a basic combo, a dodge, and 2 arts. One art is used with the press of a button, and the other is executed typically by performing a dodge attack. The system itself is pretty simple, and is mostly used to dispatch weaker mobs, or to apply a stun to an enemy before engaging in turn-based combat. It's not the main system of gameplay, but you can use it effectively to avoid engaging in turn-based encounters on weaker enemies. The game really shines in its turn-based combat. When you enter a fight, you're given a plethora of new mechanics to use and make note of. For one, the game grants you access to follow-up attacks and chain attacks, which can be used upon stunning an enemy. These give you a chance to net some extra damage when you fill the stun gauge to maximum. You'll eventually get access to Burst, which costs more than a chain attack, but is more effective and does a lot more damage. The turn-based system also grants you access to new skills. Magic and weapon skills are added to your arsenal, and each character has a customizable system that allows you to add and remove certain magic spells from their repertoire. With this, you can turn any character really into any role you want. However, your mileage will still vary. Some characters excel in certain roles more than others. That level of customization helps the game feel fresh, and you'll certainly want to keep up with the system as you progress. Positioning is also a key component of this game, and probably one of the more interesting aspects of it. You can move characters around the battlefield during turn-based combat, and where you move is not only important for offense, but defense as well. If you group your allies close together, you're more susceptible to AoE attacks, but if you stray too far apart, it's also difficult to keep in range for buffs and healing. Understanding where to position only becomes more and more important as you continue through the game. I played on normal, but you can choose between 5 difficulties. I will say that as a new player, normal did not really let up that much. I haven't played a lot of JRPGs where it feels like even if you have a basic grasp on the mechanics, the late game you kind of just scale to incredibly powerful heights. I would say more specifically, a lot of Atlas games kind of do this, where if you know the persona system well enough, you can just build broken personas, or demons in SMT. Not to say that those games aren't challenging, but, well, Persona is not challenging that much. But either way, it feels like Trails in the Sky had a very well-balanced game. Like, the game is just feels like it's the same difficulty through and through. So you're playing on normal, every fight is gonna be a little difficult, you're gonna have to strategize a little more. You know, you switch to very easy, you're gonna kill things in one hit. Basically, in the late game, I was still getting game overs due to poor positioning or not using the right skills, whatever it might be. This is one of the few games that I feel like really knows how to balance it as you play through it. But again, I'm not really an expert on difficult games. The balance quote could be entirely wrong. It really depends on the player. The only real downside I can say is that sometimes the game will lock you into areas. There's a fight in Chapter 2 that cuts you off from any route except going directly into that battle, and I was vastly undergeared for it. There was no way for me to feasibly clear it, and it felt like swapping to a lower difficulty was my only option. There was no way for me to leave the area to grind or even upgrade my equipment unless I was missing something simple, which is possible. To be blunt, it feels like a bit of an oversight. In short, for this game, just always be prepared for a fight, because there will be instances where the game doesn't give you a choice. And outside of combat, the game is standard. Exploration doesn't really offer a ton of variety. You're not going to be jumping up mountains and using really cool movement skills. You're mostly running on a linear map. You clear bushes and rocks for materials, you can talk to NPCs, and you can do side quests. There is some reward for exploring areas the story will not take you to, but a lot of the time, extra content hinges on that willingness to explore. The game also features a speed-up function, which you can adjust in the settings. It's not necessary, but it's nice to have since you will spend a lot of time walking from place to place. There are also some giant mob farming areas, which are worth checking out if you need to grind. I don't think exploration brings anything especially unique to the table, but that's fine, I don't think it needs to. And while you're exploring this world, the visuals on the game are pretty good. I think it's standard modern JRPG visuals. Trails isn't the biggest series, so you can't expect them to hammer home graphical fidelity, and this game doesn't really need that level of detail. I feel like it would be wasted on what is a good and solid art style. That said, a lot of the skill animations are incredibly well done. The animators know how to have attacks make an impact, and I think that can be an art that gets lost in a lot of games nowadays. Sometimes you have these really flashy attacks, but it doesn't feel like they hit hard. Your big specials eat up your CP, and are as cinematic as they are effective. Not to mention, with the right customizations, you can just sweep mobs off the field in an instant with some of these AoE attacks. As far as music goes, you have the option of swapping between the remade OST, the original, and an arranged version. I didn't know the arranged version was an option until I finished the game, unless it doesn't unlock until you finish the game, but I never really checked the options, which is a shame because so far what I've heard of it is pretty good. I will say I don't think there were a ton of tracks that I outright loved, but the battle theme is still stuck in my head, so that has to count for something. And regardless, it's not like the music is bad, it just may have to do with my own particular tastes. But I can firmly say that Trails in the Sky First Chapter is a phenomenal game, and well worth your time if you do like JRPGs. But do keep in mind that this is the first chapter, which means the game will have loose ends. You can debate about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but as someone who grew up in an era where a lot of games had these episodic stories that happen over the course of multiple games, it's kind of nostalgic to pick up a game knowing the next new entry will feature probably a similar or the same cast, and will start off almost exactly where we left off, instead of just hopping into a brand new cast with a brand new story and potentially a brand new world.
It's very impressive to find bracers as young as you two.
Apparently, all these games are a lot more closely connected than I thought. Like, there are direct ties between each one. And that's pretty cool, and only really encourages me to continue playing the series. But I'm curious how many titles will get the remake treatment. I assume it's just gonna be Sky. I imagine all 3, I think, of them will be remade, but I guess we won't know if the 3rd one's being remade for a while. And it will take time to get through these lengthy games. I can't imagine that I'll have finished everything else within the next year, especially since I don't really intend to continue until 2nd Chapter Remake releases.
Girl with chestnut-colored pigtails, and a black-haired boy with amber eyes.
As with all things, there is a bunch of DLC tied to this game. These range from random consumable items to DLC costumes and accessories. There's no story DLC, and there's no gameplay DLC. And whether it's worth it is truly up to you. To me, I think the costumes are neat, but one of the major ones, that is the Neo Bracer outfit for Estelle, and the plush accessories are free. So I don't see a good reason to buy the pass itself unless you want to support falcom more. I think the diner costumes are okay, but I really just kind of wish there's a little more variety. The diner theming is definitely someone's favorite, but I also kind of hate how they released the outfits in batches instead of just, you know, doing it all at once. I kind of wish it was all ready at once. I assume it was, and they just didn't activate it right away, but whatever. Either way, it's not the most egregious thing in the world. Cosmetic DLC is fine. And these costumes aren't really that... I don't say they're not that great, but they're kind of whatever to me. I've seen better, and I've seen worse. At the end of the day, I think Trails in the Sky First Chapter is a phenomenal game. It's a great remake with an incredibly fun gameplay loop. I loved a lot about this game, from the story to the characters. And I'm excited to see what comes next with 2nd Chapter Remake on the way, probably within the next 2 years. And you can let me know what you think of Trails in the Sky First Chapter in the comments down below. As always, you can leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe to the channel for more things JRPG related. We are coming up on the Game Awards in about, by the time this video's out, probably about a month and a half. And while the show itself is not known for massive JRPG reveals, there are a few big titles we could see there this year. I'm not going to make any solid predictions because last year I did and I was very wrong. But anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.